Hello BookTube, hello fellow readers. I assume you're a reader if you stumble upon this video. Last year I made a New Year resolution to start reading again. I used to read a lot when I was younger, and like many of my age, many others, I stopped reading. Last year I was like, I want to start again, I want to get back into it. And so I started looking for recommendations. As a kid I read a lot of fantasy, and I wanted to read some sci-fi, so I started looking online and I stumbled upon BookTube, which is of course a fantastic thing. So yeah, I ended up watching a lot of videos, people recommending certain books, people reviewing certain books. So I ended up with this huge list of sci-fi books and series, and I was like, where do I even start? And so I put them all in one big list, and I just started at the top. I put them all in publication date, and I just started at the beginning. And so I started in the 50s with the Foundation trilogy by Isaac Asimov and the Robot series and so on. And so my goal was to read at least 12 books, one each month. I ended up reading 18 books, so I made my goal. And so one of my goals this year was to read even more and read more consistent. All the books I read were from the 50s, and I moved to the 60s and the 70s. And so after a while I got that old urge again to read fantasy, like what I used to read all the time. And so I went back to BookTube and ended up with another huge list, probably even bigger. There's so many books, so many recommendations, and so I ended up with another huge list again, put them in on publication date, and then merged it with the sci-fi list. And at this point I was already in the 70s with my sci-fi. So I started with a fantasy series also from the 70s, which ended up being Shannara, which I'm currently reading, which I plan to finish before the 1st of January, but I'm not making it. It's a bit of a tough read, but what I noticed during the year was that I was looking for an outlet for talking about books. I don't really have any friends who read, or they read different stuff, so I can't really talk about them. I thought, as a New Year resolution this year, let's start a BookTube channel, which is very outside my comfort zone. I'm not really used to talking to a camera, talking in English. I'm Dutch, so English is not my first language, so hopefully I'll manage. But yeah, that's basically why I'm making this video, why I started doing it. And just started it to see if I enjoy doing it. My history as a reader, like I said, I used to read a lot as a kid. My mom is a reader, and when I was younger, she always would take us to the library, and we would, I would read a lot of like children books and fantasy, horror, and all kinds of genres basically. And at some point I ended up reading Harry Potter, which is like, I think everyone knows that series. It was like my first real big book, more than 100 pages, which was kind of a big step from as a young kid. And so I ended up reading Harry Potter, the first book. Like many, I fell in love with the series, and I borrowed two, the second and the third. And then the first book I bought for myself was the fourth book, which was this one, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. This is the Dutch version. Yeah, this was the first book I bought. I saved money up for it, doing chores and stuff, and this is the one I bought, and this is the Dutch version. And I always feel like the Dutch covers have pretty bad covers, but they sold anyway because they were really good. Of course, everyone knows that the Harry Potter books were super popular, and I have ended up buying the other ones as well. Going to the bookstore in the middle of the night, which was unique experience, which I don't feel like happens anymore. So I also went back to the library and basically ended up looking for more fantasy, similar to Harry Potter, but back in the day there wasn't really anything like it. And so I kind of burned out of reading fantasy in general. So burned out, and that's really when I stopped reading. I read a few books in between, and one that I ended up buying was Lord of the Rings. It's another huge classic series. There's another Dutch version, In de Band van de Ring. A huge book, 1248 pages. It took me a long while to read this. This is a really tough read, especially compared to YA, really adult fiction. It took me a few years as a teenager to read this one. Read it on and off. Watch the movies were great. So that kept me to read it again, and I wanted to finish this. It was kind of a challenge for me. I was pretty proud when I did up finishing it. And back later on, the Game of Thrones show became another huge thing, and so I stumbled upon the Song of Ice and Fire books. This is the second one, Clash of Kings. Really dark fantasy compared to more traditional stuff. And so I bought the first 3 books, and then I continued watching the show, and the show didn't really end really well in my opinion. So I never really read 4 and 5, which I still want to read at some point. He never finished the series, and he might never, but I hope he will one day. It's really a series I want to get back into, because I think this is one of the best series I ever read. But yeah, great books. I recommend them to everyone, especially adult fiction. Even though the series isn't the best, at least the last 2-3 seasons. And so yeah, I read a little bit on them. And so another series, which was also which became a TV show, as everyone probably knows, is the Witcher series. This is the first book, The Last Witch. This is really when I started reading in English. These are all short stories. It's a short book, like 200 pages, 250. Also very dark and very different from the other ones. But I really enjoyed these, and so I also kept reading a little bit. But yeah, last year I really got back into it with some sci-fi and like the Foundation series, which are the first real space opera series. And so yeah. And for this channel, I really like the other from other channels, the reading update videos, like what am I reading, what have you read, what am I going to read, that kind of stuff, which I want to start with. And I also kind of want to do like a video about the books I read last year, the 18 books. Not sure if I'm going to do all of them or like a favorite list. We'll see. Probably a favorite list, to keep it a bit positive. And maybe some people will watch my videos and we can have a little discussion about the books, and who knows. But yeah, I'm not planning on doing anything crazy or trying to make it big on YouTube, or just keep it casual. And we'll see what happens. Maybe I won't even enjoy doing it, but I'd like to think so. If anyone's watching this, love to know what you think. What's your favorite book, what's your favorite series, what you're currently reading, that kind of stuff, and get to know each other a little bit. That was my first video, I guess. And finally, of course, I want to wish you all a good year. It's the start of a new year, and hopefully we all can get some great reads again this year. Love to get to know you, and we'll see what happens. Even if you're not interested in watching this, I hope you have a great time. And maybe we'll see you again in some other videos or in the comments. Okay, bye bye.